Next up, we want to transition and talk a little bit more about returning to space. So today we have Heather Lanier with us. She is a principal at NBS, and Heather has really lived this day in and day out. And we want to share a little bit more about what we're learning as we've returned our team to our office, as well as what we're hearing from clients and what we're hearing from other influencers in the market. As I said, Heather has really lived this. She's led us through the pandemic, and her situation is a little bit different than most. Heather has come into the office, I would say, the majority of the entire pandemic, with maybe just a couple days working from home. So her perspective, I think, will be more from a leadership perspective, and also thinking about what does the future look like as we try to return people back to the office. So she's going to share some of the insights that we've learned and some of the things that she's experienced. And we are going to really talk about trying to return people back to the office with safety really at the core of all that we do. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Heather to talk a little bit more about returning to space.
Thank you. Thanks, Lori. The potency of the Cosmo is exactly why I'm not drinking one right now. So I've got my water in my Starbucks, and I'll enjoy my Cosmo when I get home. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today just sharing with you about the guide that we put back, and as Lori said, just some of the experiences we've gone through. It's definitely been an overwhelming time, and as we're thinking about getting people back into the office, there's a lot to consider and a lot to think through in order to keep people at the center and safety at the center. So our guide really is a high-level strategy and tool that we put together because there's so many things bouncing around of things to consider and things to do. We thought we would take all of those topics and synthesize them down into as short of a document as we could that started the conversation. It by no means is complete and thorough on any one given topic because there's much to talk about as it relates to each and every individual organization. There's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach to this. It's a very personal situation, and I think as a leader, it's one of the most visible lessons that I've learned is that people have been at the center of all of this from the very beginning, and each individual's situation has been unique to them. So whether it's unique to them from a personal perspective or unique to that organization. And the complexity of returning grows in magnitude as each individual business has to consider their organization overall. If you're one business, it's a lot easier with one location. If you've got multiple locations like we do at NBS, that's another level of complexity, trying to take our return to work protocols and distribute them across all the locations for consistency. Layer on top of that we have a location in Ohio. They're under completely different state orders from their governor versus what we're having in Michigan. Not to mention, some of you on the call are global organizations, and that just adds another layer of complexity to all of this. So there's very much various approaches and personal ways that each organization is going to return. Again, also just based if you're public, if you're private, or if you're a governmental institution or an educational institution. So lots on this topic, and it's going to be hard to cover it all in the time that we have. So I do want to just share that I'm open to having one-off conversations if anyone wants to have more in-depth of a discussion on any topic. And we're also hosting some roundtables. I believe we actually have our first tomorrow, where we're bringing some different organizations together and leaders and facilities team members or designers from those facilities to share and learn in a small group about what the other organizations are doing. So we're happy to facilitate those kinds of things as well. I also want to share before I jump into the content a little bit that They're by no means, based on anything that I shared today, there's going to be some trends and some generalizations, but there aren't absolutes to any of the things that we're going to discuss. Again, it's highly personal, and I believe, that we can sometimes get caught up in generalizations and have a blanket statement. That's not really true for each organization. Could be different by divisions, by locations, by departments. So it's complicated. It's highly complicated. So let's move to some of our content from the guide, and we've got a few of the highlighted topics that we're going to touch on. The first, is that there's been a lot of discussion around, is there a case for place? Should there even be an office anymore? And there's lots of considerations here. You're hearing from a lot of businesses that, they're working fine from home, and that's okay. For us in the business, right, we definitely want our people in our local communities to come back to the offices, and our real estate friends do as well. But there's varying reasons as to why people feel having an office at all is important or not. Some of the things that are being kicked around that are relevant to me that I just pulled as some highlights are thinking about innovation and how companies are going to rethink who they are as an organization, their processes, how they're going to come out of COVID and reinvent themselves. That might not be as easy to do remotely. Maybe for some, it's okay. Maybe for others, that might be a reason why they need to be together. Definitely talent management's on people's minds, attraction, retention, thinking about onboarding somebody new. We've been through a bunch of transitions here, so culturally our talent management situation is interesting as well. For us at NBS, onboarding in our locations has been key to helping people understand truly what our culture is about, because our space is deeply exemplified in our facilities, and each of our facilities for that matter. So we have cultural artifacts in our spaces. We have activities in our spaces where we bring team members together, where we build bonds and have fun. So for us, obviously as an interiors organization, we're very passionate about place, but as a company, it very much stimulates who we are as a culture. And it's interesting because each of our locations has their own little mini culture that still all ties back to NBS. So it's unique in Toledo, it's unique in Lansing, unique in Bay City, and unique in Troy, but we're all NBS locations. So even bringing people back to our offices was a little bit different based on the team members and the culture of those locations. So for us, case for place, obviously it's important. We're passionate about space, and we're hopeful that we'll see many people return to their offices. It's probably going to look different, but we're hopeful they'll return. Up next, thinking about as you're planning a return, there's really this idea of planning for the now, planning for the near term, and then planning from the far. So we've heard, and it was demonstrated quite brilliantly as you guys all introduced yourselves, each company is at a different journey in the timeline of return, even on this call. Some people jumped at the chance to get back right away and then dialed it back. Others are still in the office, and still others, we heard, aren't going to come back until the spring of 2021. There's no wrong answer, but you can see that how different this is for each organization. For some of you, the now is past, and the near is now, and the far is yet to come. For others of you, as you're returning to the office, you're still going to have a now, because your now is going to be relevant to you whenever that now is. So activities for the now, as you're welcoming people back, strangely, even though they've been in these environments, there was some hesitation around people coming back. They wanted to understand what the protocols were going to be and the safety considerations that were in place. So that was important to be thinking about and communicating very clearly. From the near perspective, as they're initially coming back into that environment, what are some of the new protocols? 6-foot social distancing. When people haven't seen each other in a long time, that 6 feet shrinks up really quick. So in order to make everybody feel comfortable, someone also has to make sure that they're managing that 6 feet. So there's protocols that need to be in place. And you don't necessarily understand or think about those until you have people back in the space. So there's that near term. And then there's that far term where, what's the space going to do for us after all of this? After COVID, which we don't know when that is, but after all of this, we will get back to a different strategy and a way of working. What is that going to look like for our organizations? And how would that affect our spaces? Our now was back in May, and we had to develop a strategy for how we were going to have people back in the office. So we have a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, with Fridays optional. So our now was all around the schedule for our team members, making sure that we had a reduced number of people in the office. And actually we assigned desks so that each person had a physical desk to return to, which is very different because we had been free address to that point. From a near perspective, our near term is what we're doing now, and we're actually really thinking through the spaces that we have and how they function as people return. So for example, I'm in a focus room right now, and I had to bring a web camera into this room because it didn't have one. So to have this kind of a conversation, I'd need a camera in this room. Prior to this room was really a heads down, and I just worked by myself kind of a space. So our spaces are going to continue to evolve, and until you get people back into your environments, you might not necessarily think through all of that. And we're here to be able to help with that. From a well-being perspective, this is not a new idea. Most of us on the call have been incorporating well-being initiatives into our organizations prior to the pandemic. And we did focus on the mental or the cognitive aspect of it, as well as the physical and the emotional. Things like ergonomics, team-based community activities or service activities, financial classes we were offering, trying to have a well-rounded health benefits package. All of those things kind of come to mind when I think about pre-COVID benefits. And most of those things are all focused around employee engagement, employee retention, and now we find ourselves in a very different place. In the guide, we reference the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's based on psychological research that was done in the 1940s that defines behavioral motivation in humans. And as companies, we were up at this top part of the pyramid, really trying to focus on in a war for talent, because we were in a time where employees really were able to decide where they wanted to work and kind of direct their attentions to the organizations that were most appealing to them. So we were working really hard up at this top part of this pyramid to help people feel engaged and connected and have personal accomplishment in the organizations. That's not going to go away, but drastically because of the pandemic, we find ourselves at this bottom part of the pyramid where people are just concerned about their health and their safety. Those are very basic human needs, and going through this as a leader, it was very humbling to me to take a step back and think about the environment that we've created here. People had hesitation to come back. So we had to make sure we were communicating the safety plans that we had in order to engage them. So well-being continues to be a highly important topic in the return to space. Next, we have people, and people are at the heart of our organizations. And as I was saying, the pandemic really shifted the focus immediately and almost exclusively to our people. And everyone was forced to stay home. Companies had to build communication strategies around what was going to happen and the state of the business. And sadly, many of us were challenged to have to do some furloughs, and it was a very tense time. The frequency of our communication, the tones of our communication, the choice of words, whether it was through email or through a Teams meeting, greatly shifted. And we're really focused on by our people because the interactions of mannerisms that we get in a physical interaction or a face-to-face interaction are limited by this technology. Even though it's great that we could easily connect, it did really change. So, leaders have had to really shift their focus and lead with more empathy than ever before. It's been a really stressful time for leaders, and I would just give a shout out to the leaders on the call from NBS and all of you, if you have people reporting to you, and for everyone else to just think about giving props to your leaders who have had to lead through this time. It's been unlike any other time in my career and in most of our careers. I've seen very seasoned senior chief executive officers baffled by this whole situation and where to go and what to do. So it's been a very interesting, challenging time. But if people are our greatest asset, then shifting the mindset and really focusing on an organization's people is what we all needed to be doing or continue to need to do as we try to bring people back. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about work from home. And I feel like we could go on in all of these topics much more deeply. But as we're talking about work from home, I think that we all have witnessed the greatest experiment ever on this scale completed. And it was very humanizing to see your coworkers, in their home settings, to see your leaders in their home settings, to see your customers in their home settings, the barking dogs, the delivery man at the door, just the kids running around. It was interesting and humanizing. And so I think that's been a good thing that we're going to take away from this. I also believe that work from home is going to be a new part of most organizations' new normal. And we've all learned as this unfolded that it could be done. But for some organizations, you're hearing almost, we'll work from home forever. We're never going to come back. And that might work for some organizations. But I would just say for NBS especially, with a culture that we have that's so rooted in being together and collaboration and laughter and those kinds of things, it's not the same through technology. So for us, work from home will remain, and we had work from home prior, but not everyone took us up on it. So we're hopeful that as we come back, we're going to have people in the office a couple of days a week, and then they'll take the benefit of the flexibility of working from home. But it's going to be unique to each company, each division. Certain roles might be easier to do from home. So it's going to depend on the industry, the job function, the role, the personality of the person. There's all kinds of things that are going to drive that, but I think we definitely will see work from home continue to stay. Next, design. Just more than ever, I think this is a great thing for us all on the call, because we're all somehow related to this industry that focuses on space. And at NBS, we are passionate that space matters. It can help people, when designed properly and thoughtfully, learn better and heal and deliver better business results. So for me, I'm excited about the fact that we have this opportunity as we lead out of COVID to create destinations, create spaces in our offices and in our facilities that become destinations for our team members and our employees to want to come to work. Maybe they're not doing heads down focus work. Maybe they are doing that at home. But to create technology rich and engaging collaborative spaces where people can come together and brainstorm and share good ideas. And maybe there is a connection to a digital aspect as well, but that's what I think we're all going to be challenged with as we move forward. And I think it will be different for each organization. So I think whether we're starting right now in the now phase of thinking about how we're bringing people back and designing with, the 6-foot social distance, as we get to the future, it'll be more around what's the destination, what's the reason that people are going to want to come to our facilities and the real estate that we do have. Rolling along here, I'm going to talk about cleaning a little bit. Our employees' expectations of clean has definitely increased, and chances are the once a night cleaning routines that we had are no longer going to help our employees feel very comfortable. So we're all going to have a greater commitment to cleanliness and make it more visible so that people really understand that cleaning has happened. There'll be more of the traditional kinds of cleaning that we've always had. Maybe they'll have more of it throughout the day, but I think there'll be other strategies and ways that we're implementing cleaning. You're seeing all kinds of fogging. NBS does fogging where we come in and we can decontaminate the facility. So I think there'll be, some layering of what clean looks like and means to the organization. Our industry is also seeing a rise around indoor air quality and thinking about how we can have improved and more efficient HVAC systems. So I think these different tools are going to continue to drive real estate decisions, facility decisions going forward. But again, it ties back to that comfort of that mental well-being of our team members, knowing that we have that on our mind more than ever. I think you'll also see some uptick of different materials. So we have our friends from Virginia Tile on the phone. Maybe there's going to be different antimicrobial applications from a tile perspective. We might see nuances in drywall and paint, and even Steelcase has partnered with MIT and researchers there trying to understand the spread of pathogens and how that might affect some of the products that Steelcase is bringing to market. So, an increased focus on clean at a variety of different levels. And last but not least would be this idea of digital transformation. Can you ever imagine that we would have hosted a Wind Down Wednesday like this, where we're across computers and we're all in different locations and everyone's still drinking the same cocktail, which is kind of cool. But think about this now for weddings and birthday parties and graduations. Like, this is how people have been celebrating, and thank goodness for technology for that reason. So we don't want to not be thankful and grateful that we have this kind of technology at our hands. But I think we're going to have to continue to understand how we're going to further leverage it in our organizations. The environments that we've created for our teams, whether it's a conference room or collaborative area, more than ever is going to merge in the future both the physical and the digital, where right now myself, Lori, and Megan are all currently in the NBS facility, but we're each in a separate room. Quite honestly, because protocols are we can have our masks off, but wouldn't it be great if there was a room that comfortably had the camera shot of all three of us in the room, and we could still have this kind of a dialogue with the 50 of you that are on the other end. But I'd ask you to think about yourself, does your current space support these kinds of virtual meetings? Do you have cameras set up with the Teams technology ready so that a couple of people could come together and make a call to a client? Chances are probably not, because like I said, even the room I'm in didn't have a camera. I could use my laptop, but then I'd be looking down and then looking up, and so it's uncomfortable. So as a user, we want to see the digital and the physical more effectively merge as we return to the office. That's one reason we come back to the office, is we don't have these levels of technology. So there's a lot to consider, and there was not enough time to even scrape the surface, but these are some of the things that are on our mind as we're thinking about this return. So I'd love to open it up. Anybody wants to stay on for a few minutes and ask some questions? We're happy to answer some things. I feel like I rambled on, but.
So we've had some comments in the chat around onboarding and around the challenge of doing that remotely. I know we also have some HR professionals on the phone, so I was wondering if any of you would like to just turn your cameras on and come off mute and just share some of your experiences and some of the things that you're thinking about maybe as an HR professional and how this is affecting bringing and onboarding team members.
This is Vivian. And thanks for the presentation. Some great information there. And I can say that you hit on many of the points that we have encountered in even bringing back a small number of employees to the workplace. I think communication, as I noted in the chat, has been very key. The terminology you use, the tone, being careful about, how we talk about protocols and practices that will be necessary in the workplace and being sensitive to the concerns that staff have. Even with few people in the workplace, they're still concerned about room capacity, ventilation, will they have enough PPE, those kinds of things. And so again, you've hit on all of those things, and it's been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge as we bring more people back into the workplace. But again, I appreciate everything that you've offered, and you've hit on many of the points that we've encountered.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's what's one of the hardest points too is that I might be very comfortable coming back and someone else isn't. So, as a peer and a team member, those are things you have to keep in mind, but also as a leader. So I've tried very hard to communicate. There's no judgment. If you're not comfortable coming back, that's totally okay. We're trying to find that right balance because it is a very fine line. At some point, bringing people back to maintain business levels is also important. So it's a very tricky, balance for sure.
So on top of that, we have team members who have young children at home or school-age children at home, and that just adds another layer of complexity because we want to keep these team members, but we also want to be empathetic to their situation. So Heather, I don't know if you could share a little bit more on some of the things that we've been thinking about and putting into place from an NBS perspective to really help our team members stay as engaged as they can with us.
Sure. So it was important to us that we address the issue. I also have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. Very different than having 3 elementary school-age children. But there's still various levels of stress. So trying to understand that it's probably going to be different this fall than it was in the spring, because in the spring, every school was just trying to figure out what to do to keep things moving along until the year-end close. Now, grades matter, attendance matters. There's additional stress levels to these parents. So we hosted a conversation. We asked the parents to attend. We invited all of our team members could attend if they wanted, but we invited them to attend and basically said, let's have a dialogue. We have some ideas on things you could do if you're feeling overwhelmed and that you need to flex your schedule a little bit or change things a little bit. Here's some options that we think about. You could go down to part-time, you could flex your hours, you could use the Extended Family Medical Leave Act. There was a variety of tools in the toolkit. But again, because every situation was unique to each individual, we didn't want to be prescriptive. So we said, let us know what you're thinking. Do you have an idea on what would help you maintain your employment at NBS because you don't want to exit the company, but you also know that you need to be committed to your family. So what is an option that you might come back to us with? And all we said was that we'd be open to consider it. We'd be open to talk through it. And then if someone came back to us with, let's say, a flexed hour schedule where they wanted to work from 6:30 to 3:30, we agreed that as an organization, the managers would work to share that kind of a schedule, and that individual and that leader would have regular check-ins to see how it was going, because it has to work for both the individual, the company, and our customers, right? And many of you that are on the call. And of the 40 or so parents that this greatly affected, we only had 5 people come back and ask to have some dialogue, and most of them just wanted to flex their hours. No one took an extended leave, the Extended Family Medical Leave Act. So it worked out well for us, and we're monitoring it as we go forward. But in the end, the idea that that was on our mind, many of our parents just said, it's nice that you were thinking about that, and they appreciated it. So again, trying to lead with empathy, but walking that line because we also have to run a business. And it's very difficult. It's a very challenging situation. But I don't know if there's anything else, Laura, you wanted me to share on that, but that was kind of the strategy and thought behind it.
I think you did a great job, and I do want to continue to be cognizant of everybody's time, so I'm going to move us along. Hopefully we can have a little bit more of this chat as we open it up into more of the social hour. We've got a couple other things to get through, but we did want to thank Heather for sharing the ideas and the thoughts that she did today. And where we started and hearing everybody on the call is at a different place in this journey, and there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So we want you to know that we're here to help. We have encouraged our team members to come back to the office if they feel like they're ready to come back to the office, because we are learning together, and what we're learning, we're sharing. So we appreciate that you guys are here with us today, and I know that we have a giveaway that we need to get to. So everybody that is on the call has been entered into a drawing, and Megan is going to pull out a name. So we have 2 tumblers and a Cosmo kit as our prize drawing for today.
All right. And must be still on the call to win. So,
God, that's a great point.
yes, gotta still be with us here.
I see that we just had a couple people exit, so hopefully that's not going to affect.
There's Sarah Davis from Pop House still on.
I am.
Hey!
Congratulations,
Perfect.
Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah, we will actually be in contact with you, and we will figure out how we can get the Cosmo kit and the tumblers to you, whether that's at the office or at your house, because it sounds like you guys are still primarily at home.
We are still at home. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
So next up, we wanted to share that we are going to do Wind Down Wednesday in October, and we are headed back to the wine as our signature cocktail. So we are grateful that we've spent the last 4 times with Kathy Sullivan from Sidecar Bartending. If any of you are interested in her contact information, we are happy to pass that along. She does create really cool experiences. But we're headed back to work with Christelle, who was our first featured presenter, who is really a wine connoisseur and food connoisseur, and she is going to share a little bit more once we select what our wine for October is going to be like. So we hope that you can join us again in October. And at this point, we are going to have Megan pull the slides down. We encourage everybody to continue to finish your cocktail, and hopefully we can open it up and have a little bit more of a social conversation. And if there is any additional questions for Heather or anybody else on the call, it's time to chat. So if everybody can turn on their cameras and come off mute, that would be great.
See Kathy mixing up those Cosmos and passing them out virtually. I don't know how that would work, but it would be great.
That would be great. Do we still have Heidi on the call from Bosch?
I'm here.
Heidi, so you had mentioned in your intro that for a couple years you have been thinking about keeping people at home. So I didn't know if you would mind sharing, a little bit more around that thought process and how the situation has kind of impacted that.
Okay. We have been renovating our headquarters since 2011, and we finalized it in 2017. And through that process, we've been trying to, we call it flexible worker. We used to call them nomads, but that was a negative connotation we discovered. So now we call them flexible workers. I'm flexible. I can work from home. So we tried to encourage that, and our upper management was very much for it, and our associates were very much for it. But where we found the backlog was mid-level management. They wanted to see their people in front of them. So, we kept trying to explain they can be in front of you, but maybe not doing necessarily their work, where maybe somebody's working from home and they start at 7 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. And then they end up working until 7 p.m. because they just get lost in their work. And you actually have people that are more productive when they're home, with the understanding that some people maybe have little kids, a wife or a husband, and a couple dogs at home that maybe drive them crazy and they can't focus. So we understand it's not for everyone to work from home, but we've been trying to encourage, our baseline was to say, if you have a laptop and a phone and you can work at a coffee bar, then you can probably work from home. So the biggest thing that was a pushback was my storage. Where am I going to put my storage? Where am I going to put all my stuff? And now we can point out, well, you haven't been in the office for 8 months and you haven't gotten in those file cabinets or drawers. So do you really need to have storage on site? So we're trying to encourage working from home if you can, the majority of the time, and maybe going in 1 day a week or possibly 2 days a week, or maybe just when you need to come into the office. So it's been eye-opening for a lot of the management, and they've understood now that we really can function and we really can work together remotely. So, it's been very eye-opening. So we always laugh in facilities, we laugh that, it just took the pandemic to make this happen. So we've been trying to get it done since 2011. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that.
I'm talking about our Farmington Hills and in Plymouth and Novi offices, but we have 149 sites across the U.S. So, like you said, different states have different rules. The thing that I've been busy with Steelcase and working a little bit with NBS on is furniture for home. How can we offer a discounted rate for having furniture for home, or supplies or monitors, or our vendors for that? How can we set up things? So working with HR and trying to get that stuff set up to help people with their at-home office experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. And I think it's very interesting because I do think that this pandemic has really allowed people to realize they can work from home. And you can be productive at home with certain tasks. I know that you've always been an advocate for space and really progressive space. And so I'm just wondering, and I'll throw this back out to Heidi, but really anybody else on the call too, is as you're thinking about what the future of workspace might look like, knowing, in Heidi's case, that they're encouraging people to work from home, the focus is really shifting, right? And it's shifting to spaces where people can come together and they need to look and feel different, and really merging digital and physical. So I don't know if there's anything top of mind for you, Heidi, or anybody else on the call that they want to share just around where they see the future of workspace going.
When Heather said you guys were talking a little bit more about flex time, well, that was something that we compromised if people were hesitant on having their people work from home, was offering the flex time. That was part of the package too, was, if your kids have an event at 3 p.m., that's fine. If you get back online and you're checking emails at 8 p.m., so because we're a world organization, everything, if you're trying to get a hold of Japan, that's 13 hours different than Germany. So, it's different times, different things that we're working anyhow. So that was something that we've always had in place since the beginning of this whole renovation that we've been doing. And I forgot, there was something you said that I was going to say something else, but I can't remember.
So your future spaces, just thoughts on future spaces?
Yeah, we're right now talking about closing a lot of our lease facilities and moving people into the headquarters, because and that was one of the points all along. I just could shake people, because I kept saying, if we just could use less space, or if people could telecommute more and didn't own a desk, it's free space, then we don't need all of this real estate, which is a big cost. So that was our kind of argument, was how much we pay in real estate and how much we pay for utilities in those real estates and all that kind of stuff. So we're talking about any of the lease space, closing some of those in the Michigan area and moving those people into Farmington Hills or Plymouth, where we can find room. And it's funny because we keep saying where we can find room, but right now, like I said, out of 3,000 desks, we have 150 people that are there, but most of the time they're in the lab or the garage. So they're not even sitting in the office environment either. So yeah, it's been a big eye opener for a lot of people, a lot of upper management, seeing where they could save on costs. And then two, because we're automotive focused and AI focused actually, we've realized that we've had a lot of setbacks. And so how can we save money? And that also played into it. You know, if we close some of these facilities, how much money can we save? That kind of thing. So that's been something we've been looking at too.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yep. I'm a little buzzed, but okay.
You did say those Cosmos would do that to you, right?
I haven't drank in a while.
And I think there's more than one. I think it's a couple Cosmos you can get out of that whole mix. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So I know that we also have some education clients on the phone, and the person that I can see in the middle of my screen is Christy Pfeiffer. So hopefully you're not going to cringe when I call on you, but you had mentioned when you jumped on that, you know, from a Bowling Green perspective, right, you're working from home, but then you're going to campus for different projects and different things. So anything else you'd like to share, things that are top of mind from a Bowling Green perspective?
I think the big struggle for us right now is trying to determine when and how and what our new normal will be. We have a lot of different departments that are we're kind of unique because we're one big campus, but each department is kind of running and college kind of on their own scheme. So we have some like our ITS folks, they've actually moved the majority, I would say like 80% of our IT folks have actually moved off campus, remotely, and they're not coming back. They're permanent. We have a lot of other departments that right now are currently all remote, working until December, and then there's a lot of like my group that's a little bit hybrid. We're kind of unique because I'm constantly doing what we do is very difficult to do remotely. So you have to go look and see a space. You have to help with the client work through the spaces, and FaceTime is great, but you can't do that remotely. So it's interesting to see the different levels of comfort that folks have. Some people are like, yep, I got my mask on, you're good, it's business as usual. And other folks are, okay, 10 feet is too close to me, and I'm really cautious. But a lot of our discussions have been revolving around, well, how do we plan for if we go back to normal, and does that normal, what does that look like? And it's interesting to see all the different thoughts and views. And I have one coworker who is convinced that the handshake is dead and never coming back. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's just kind of interesting. So right now I'm just trying to absorb all the information I can from talks like this one that kind of help see, okay, what are people outside of our academic community thinking? What are businesses? Because a big push on our campus has been that we need to start, and we've done it with our new College of Business building that we designed and created, to start mimicking practices that are done in the business world, not necessarily the academic world. So I feel like we're kind of on that fence of, oh, we still kind of want to be academic, but we want to know what business is doing. So conversations like this are really helping me to kind of bring another side to the conversations as we continue to have them. So thank you.
Yeah,
Well, we appreciate you. Yeah, we appreciate you sharing and just kind of putting yourself out there. We're all in this together, right? We're all just figuring it out. And so I think the more we can dialogue, the more we can talk to each other and share different perspectives, it might help us, right, as we try to, where it makes sense, return people to the office and find that right balance, right, for our companies and our educational institutions, our healthcare institutions. So thanks for sharing.
You're very welcome. And it looks like I just got an interesting question that asked about how they determined, and it was basically department determined. So, but I have to run, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being with us, Christy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
I think it's interesting, right? So a lot of IT people like to have focus time, so they're potentially maybe a first group to consider to move off site because they can have more of that heads down time. And I'm not in IT, so I don't know, but I just am curious, like, by not being co-located, are you missing out on sharing, what the new trends are, or, different program language, tips and insights, or do they just chat because that's innately in them, right? Versus a different group that perhaps might want some focus time, but still wants that blend of being around people and coming back and being connected to people. And that, to Christy's point, that their work requires some different levels of interaction than maybe an IT role does. So
I can tell you at Bosch, we did a year ago in July, we did a survey where for 10 weeks that we counted head counts on every floor several times a day for 10 weeks. And we discovered that more than 50% of the floor was empty at any time of the day, every floor. Yep. So that told us, I think it was a 1:7 whatever ratio, as far as what we were occupying. And so we were trying to show we're not filling the seats anyhow, even though they're assigned seats. You have you walk on the floor, it's a lot of empty desks, and that's not very inspiring. We call it inspiring working conditions, and that's not very inspiring work environment if nobody's there. So we were trying to figure out how to get more people in the office. So that's where closing some of the sites and bringing more people in is helpful. But I can tell you our engineers have told us they don't want to telecommute. There's a lot of engineers that want to be on site, and that makes sense. They work with a lot of the guys in the labs or out in the garage. So they kind of all work hand in hand, and it depends on the department what group has decided to come into the office a little bit more than the others. And we have security. Heather made the comment, you're in different parts of the building so you can take your mask off. And that's one thing that Bosch did was you can't ever take your mask off unless you're eating or drinking, which has been, I guess, very, a lot of pushback in our office about that. And so our security are the ones that are going around and telling people to put their masks back on, or our health environmental safety people. And but I can understand that if you're not 6 feet within any, and we have huge, like I said, huge space and nobody's there. Some people have told me they can walk through the buildings and never see one person. So do you really need the mask on for that? So, that's definitely a big pushback.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, from a management level has to be thought about, because it can be uncomfortable to say to somebody, you guys are closer than 6 feet, can you step apart? And we oftentimes have some of, our clients in our space, and they have different perspectives. So if they're in a group and they take their mask down, they're not necessarily following our protocol. So it's very awkward. And again, each person has different levels of comfort with it. So definitely a challenge for sure. And so that's why I do believe that some organizations have just chose to not deal with it right now, right? They're just doing the remote aspect and saying, we're not going to put the mind share into that. And that's okay if that's working, for that organization. But like Lori said, we use our environments as little petri dishes, right? Talking about germs. But, to understand and experiment, and, situations happen, and it dawns on us, wow, that application of that space isn't right. So we need to change those things, because all of you as our customers rely on us to help think through some of that and be, a place that you can come and see some of those things. So for us, it's important that we are experimenting in that regard. But definitely different for each organization. So.
I'm working with CI right now to set up. We have a system called eRooms that is a German, Bosch design thing where people can check out the conference rooms. It's like it works through Outlook, but it's not Outlook. And you can look at every floor and pick out the conference room that you want. And so now I'm talking with them about making all the desks reservable. So you can reserve the desk, or we can block off desks that people can't reserve. So every other desk right now is blocked off. And then, so that's one thing that we're doing too that's different, is setting up so that you can reserve a space that you're going to sit in. And then if there's contact tracing, then we can go back and look who sat in that area, who was around. Yeah. So that's one thing that we've changed or are changing.
So I see that we have a couple of A&D folks still on the call. We also have a couple of different clients on the call. I see Tony Burbank's still with us, even though he just said he was here for the alcohol, so he must be still enjoying that drink. Tony, I believe you were the one that said you're about 10 to 15% back in the office, if I wrote that down correctly.
Yeah, we're about 10 to 15%, and that's in our headquarters in Farmington, but also in our field offices across the U.S. So I'm actually right across the freeway from Heidi. So hi, Heidi.
Hi.
So I've been to your building and toured it before. So,
What group are you?
I'm facilities building management. So I've been to your building before in the past and toured your location.
Sorry.
Amerisure.
Oh, okay. Yes, I've given you guys a tour actually. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're taking a similar approach as Bosch and Heidi. We did attendance and occupancy, and very similar. We're 50% occupied, and in some field offices we were 35%. Headquarters is a little different. We're about 85%, so we kind of assume that. So this is all pre-COVID, and what we've realized is that we can work remote very effectively. The pandemic really hasn't hurt our business. We're insurance, so we're pretty solid in that regard. But we've also looked at work-life balance. So we're actually piloting our St. Louis office to be 95% remote. And John Barber, who's with NBS, worked with me on that project. We just finished it, and we've sent all of our employees remote except for our resident employees. And resident means that your job requires that you have dedicated space for whatever reason. So we only have a handful of those employees, and then everyone else, we've created hoteling and desk sharing spaces, kind of an open office concept where they can come in and work at any open space whenever they want. So right now they're all remote, but once we do open up, they'll have the ability to come in the office, but we've reduced the square footage by about 65%. And that's a pilot for us, but I anticipate that that's going to be our new model going forward. There are offices that we're planning on closing. We're not getting rid of the employees, not that, but we're just going to go 100% remote. Those are our smaller offices. But our tier 2 offices and tier 1s, which are our larger offices, those will still exist because we do find value in the on-site collaboration, the ideation, the human interaction. So we do find value in that. So we'll still have office space. It's just going to look different. They'll be smaller, but they'll still meet the needs when people need to come in and have a meeting or collaborate or onboard. It's something that I really talk with our executives about is, they had the idea that, everyone can work remote. And I said, yeah, that's fine. We all are seasoned employees. We have relationships. We've carved out our career at this organization, but a new employee doesn't understand the culture yet. And you have to have some kind of interaction at some point with those new employees to onboard them, to teach them the culture and teach them, that that tribal knowledge that is shared in the upper ranks. So we look forward to our pilot. We just finished that project in St. Louis, and unfortunately we can't survey anyone yet to see how successful it is because everyone's still remote. But we believe that that's going to be the model going forward for us.
That's great. I think it's interesting to see that you're trying it, right, and see what kind of ramifications there are, what kind of benefits there are. I think that's awesome. And I would add on to the onboarding. Also, future leadership development is really hard to do distance, right? So if you can bring people together and spend some time, you have the ability to cultivate future leaders a little bit more effectively, I think. So being 100% remote, might not be ideal for that.
Yeah. And so, one thing that the employees really were concerned about was the technology aspect. What are they going to get when they're remote? How do they come in the office? What about furniture? So we've made the decision for that pilot to give all our employees laptops and headsets. And so we're basically giving them a kit, whether they need the equipment or not. We've already got a kit ready for those employees that we've sent them. So they're all laptops. They're all using the same model. On the furniture side, we're still discussing whether or not we give them a stipend or whether or not we provide them with a desk and a chair or something like that. So that's kind of still in discussion. It's not an issue right now, but we know we need to wrap our arms around it if this is the new model going forward.
Well, yeah, Tony, that we have those programs in case you want to do a work from home. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's stipend. We can help.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
You knew Johnny Barber was going to jump on.
This is the perfect time for me to jump in real quick about that. Yeah.
You've been pretty quiet this whole time, John Barber. I didn't even know you were on the call.
Well, you know what? I love hearing all from all the clients. It's just awesome. This has been a great call.
Yeah. What program are you talking about, John?
Well, we have programs with Steelcase that gives companies the ability to extend extra discounting to their employees.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If really good pricing, if they just want a chair or if they just want a desk or whatever. So that's available. There's live programs that we can do for you.
Yep, that's something we're working with Jessica and Steelcase. Yeah. But the one thing that kind of came up at Bosch was, are we responsible if somebody has an ergonomic issue? So we've already had someone come in with a doctor's note that they need a new chair. Yeah. And so, are we responsible? Are they responsible because they're working from home? Like, that's something that's still out there, not figured out yet.
Yeah, and it's probably a question for your corporate lawyer because, for us, we can provide you those ergonomic tools for their home with a great discount and a great cost, and we can have it, delivered and set up for them if they wanted to, or just delivered to them. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I think a lot of companies are thinking, well, they can just work from home. So, other than technology, we don't have to support them. But at the same time, companies have to look at that kind of thing, where it's like, well, are we going to make our employee work from their bed? You know what I mean? It's just without proper ergonomics and, because maybe that employee is not, doesn't have a home. Maybe it's a studio apartment and they don't have a lot of room. So, but, that's the company's choice, right? So, but that's where we're there to fill in that gap. If they say, some companies of mine are thinking about one in mind is thinking about giving their employees a $750 stipend. This company has 3,500 employees at their headquarters. So what can you get for $750? It really comes down to the desk and the chair.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Or what about a stand that you can put on your dining room table that can lower and rise. Okay?
Your wife doesn't like that. Your wife won't like that. Taking all the stuff.
Not on our dining room table. No, thank
Well,
you.
hell, man, Heather, I got 3 kids and
I
3
know.
pets. I mean, I'm working from the garage right now.
I'm telling you, that's
All
why
I'm saying is I have a sit-to-stand desk. It's the whole desk, and it was only $200. So
Yeah.
$750. That still gives me $550 to buy whatever else I want.
Right. Exactly. So, a lot of companies like you guys are, thinking about and are thinking about that. What do we offset it? How do we do it? So, but
Well,
we have
there's a lot of
programs.
there
But
were a
we
lot
have
of
programs.
conversations
We have
around.
programs that literally can set your company up with a website to where you could push it out through your intranet, and you could say, "Hey, okay." If you guys decide, or even if you don't decide to give a stipend, you can push it out and say, "Look, we've set this special deal up to where you can get great products at a great price, and you guys buy it from the credit card." And it's like Amazon, right? So it's like your employee, and I don't care if they're in Indiana, they can get on the internet, on their website, on their Amerisure or their Bosch or whatever website that we build for you, and they can pick a desk or pick a chair, and then when delivery comes, they can say, well, as they're purchasing, they can say, well, no, I just need it delivered to my house because it's not a desk that I have to assemble, so I don't care about it. Or, you know what? I'm ordering a desk, I'm ordering a chair, and I need some installation help. And they can click on a button, which is called a white glove service, and just like on Amazon, say the freight for the chair is $20. Well, now I'm ordering a desk and I'm ordering a chair, and I need some local installation help to deliver it and install it for me. They hit this white glove button. Okay, so for $125, some local installer that it's approved by Steelcase will receive it, take it out to their home, install it, and everything is good. So, and then, by using their credit card, their own credit card, then if they have a sniping that the company says, hey, we're going to give you $500, they can expense that. We can do it that way, or we can do it to where if the company wants to control all the purchases. Now, if the company wants to control all the purchases with purchase orders, we have that set up too. So, it's out there, it's available.
So I just wanted to go back to, Tony, you had said 3 words. You talked about onboarding, and then you talked about innovation and collaboration. And to me, that's really the future, right? How are we going to innovate? How are we going to collaborate? What do our spaces need to look like? And I'm thinking those spaces are probably going to be more at the office. And that's really what we want to be focusing on and putting mind share into, because that's what's going to help us continue to be successful from a company perspective too.
So did I answer that question okay?
You gave us all the details and probably more than anyone wanted.
Do you know how many
Tony's
times?
eyes were starting to roll back in his head. He's like, I've heard this more than one time.
Can you tell that how many times I've presented this option?
No, but we can tell how many Cosmos you had.
Oh my God, did I sound that bad?
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Well, guys, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been really great conversation. As Heather mentioned before, we're happy to have sidebars with anybody. Continue to just, kick around ideas. Everybody's at a different point. Everybody has a little bit of a different perspective. None of them are wrong, right? We're again, trying to forge forward and figure out what are we going to look like as we come out of this pandemic. So Again, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't want to end the call, so you can feel free to hang out, but I also know that we've got a variety of people that are kind of just hanging on the line that are probably like, can I leave? Can I not leave? And we are about a half an hour over in time, but really appreciate, everybody's thoughts and comments, and look forward to the next time that we can see you at a Wind Down Wednesday, or even better, just interact one-on-one, and continue to talk about, what the future of our working lives and environments are going to look like.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for the input. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Tony. See you, Heidi.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.